The National Cabinet is meeting this morning to discuss new measures to support tenants in financial trouble due to the coronavirus. The virus is continuing to spread. There are almost 3,000 confirmed cases in Australia, with the number of global infections exceeding 500,000. 13 people have died from the virus. The latest are 3 men in their 70s, 2 in Victoria and 1 from Perth. A major life insurer says new policies will not cover payouts to frontline doctors who die from COVID-19. It's understood the exclusion clause could also cover asthmatics, people over 50 and those with lung disease. New South Wales Police have begun fining businesses and people who are failing to follow laws relating to COVID-19. Leaders of the G20 countries say they'll inject $5 trillion into the global economy to tackle the fallout from the pandemic. During a virtual summit, they also promised robust support for developing nations. The US now has more confirmed cases of the coronavirus than any other country, with more than 82,400 positive tests. 82,400 positive tests. Johns Hopkins University says the US tally has overtaken China and Italy. Well, National Cabinet is meeting this morning to discuss Australia's next steps in responding to coronavirus. On the agenda, possible rent assistance and further restrictions on how Australians go about their daily lives. Political reporter Stephanie Boris joins us again. Stephanie, there is a lot to get through for National Cabinet this morning.
That's right. Good morning. So both state and territory leaders are meeting with the Prime Minister right now via phone hookup. As you said, a number of issues to get through, and it's all about trying to ensure there's a national approach to how Australia tries to tackle coronavirus, both from a health perspective and also from an economic perspective. So there's been a lot of discussion around commercial and residential rents because we are seeing a number of businesses close and a number of people lose their jobs. So the question is, how do those people afford or are able to keep those properties? We understand that there is an attempt to try and reach a national consensus on how to do so. It is a little bit difficult considering states and territories have different rules around renting regulations, but one of the ideas on the table is to put a moratorium on evictions so that if people can't pay their rent within a short period of time, they will not be kicked out. Also on the agenda today is whether there should be further lockdowns. New South Wales and Victoria are keen to push forward with further restrictions on what people can and can't do. The reason being those two states have had a number of cases of confirmed coronavirus patients. So Victoria and New South Wales may push forward compared to other states and territories, but we understand that there is very much an acceptance within National Cabinet that there may have to be different approaches sometimes, depending on how many cases there are in different towns and villages. Now, there has been a lot of discussion, obviously, about whether Australia should go into full lockdown like what we're seeing overseas. We need to keep in mind that Australia is in a different situation to other countries, and the Deputy Chief Medical Officer this morning has defended Australia's approach so far, saying that the necessary measures have been taken.
Everybody is looking at the evidence of past pandemics, the evidence of what is happening around the world, what is happening in different countries. The pandemic in each country is different depending on the responses that we've seen, the responses and availability of healthcare services, the availability of resources to protect our healthcare workforce and also to protect the general members of the public. How this rolls out, whether it's rolling out in the right sequence to please everybody is of course a moot question. But please be really reassured with the advice that you're seeing coming out from our Chief Medical Officer and the advice that's being given to our government.
Steffi, we have seen a number of small and medium-sized businesses already close their doors. It is widely expected there'll be more. While some help has been offered, it's expected that more assistance is now on its way.
Well, the big question for businesses is now that they've had to close their doors, what do they do? Because they aren't receiving any income from customers walking through the door, but they still have bills to pay, such as rent, utilities, and any other debts that come up in the weeks and months ahead. So the question is, do you shut down the business for good, or do you try and keep it going so that you can open the doors when this coronavirus crisis is over? Now, what's being considered at a government level is this so-called hibernation plan. plan. So what it would mean is that once a business closes, it doesn't have to pay rent or utility bills or keep up with other debt obligations until it opens up again. The idea behind this is that so when we get through this crisis, businesses can actually open their doors, and there will be small and medium-sized businesses to offer services to all Australians. While the government is not confirming anything at this stage, the Finance Minister has said that the government is looking at essentially a third round of support measures.
What essentially we need to figure out is how we can, in the most appropriate fashion and in a sustainable fashion, keep as many businesses as possible alive through this period, so that there is this opportunity for the strongest possible bounce back on the other side.
And there is some good news for some Australians this morning who are overseas, with flights now being organised to bring people who've been stranded home.
That's right. There are a number of Australians still stuck overseas at the moment. The reason for that is a number of commercial flights have been cancelled, and of course many countries have put restrictions on their borders with who can come and go. So the federal government has been working with commercial operators to try and get Aussies home. News today that about 260 Australians will board a flight on Sunday from Peru and will be brought home. That of course though is still subject to the country's regulations and whether anything changes between now and then. It just shows how constantly evolving this situation is. Further to that, in Uruguay, a travel company is also expected to get a plane load of Aussies out of there, not just people that are in the country, but also on a cruise ship nearby. Now, the federal government says it is still working with commercial operators to see if further flights can get into South America and get Aussies home in the weeks ahead.
All right, Stephanie Boris in Canberra, thank you. The New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian has given her strongest indication yet that she'll push for tougher lockdown measures as the number of community-acquired cases of coronavirus rises in the state. There are now 1,405 confirmed instances of the virus in New South Wales, with 186 new infections reported in the last 24 hours. Ms Berejiklian says tougher restrictions are on the table at this morning's National Cabinet meeting.
If New South Wales has to take difficult decisions, we will, because we're at a critical stage where we want to stop the community-to-community transmission. That's critical for us to make sure the virus doesn't spread and we don't have more people in hospital than we can cope with. We never want to get to that situation, and that's why it's really important for us to ramp up our enforcement, ramp up our compliance, but also make sure that everybody has clear information. It's up to all of us now to come together to do our part and to really deal with the disease at this critical stage, because if we keep it contained as much as we can at this stage, we are better off in the next few weeks and months, and I can't stress that enough. So please heed the warnings. Please don't move around unless you absolutely have to. If you're an older or vulnerable person, don't even leave home. But please know that no matter what decisions our state takes in the coming days and weeks, that you'll always have a supermarket you can get what you need from. You'll always have a pharmacy. You'll always have those essential things that you need to use for your daily health.
Tasmania's Premier Peter Gutwein has given a stern warning to deter visitors hoping to head to the state after its borders have closed. He says only returning Tasmanians or essential travellers are allowed.
These are unprecedented times, and I will keep making the decisions that are needed for our state to get us through this, and we will get through. This includes ensuring that tough border controls are put in place and are working, and my expectation could not be clearer. Unless you are a returning Tasmanian or an essential traveller, you should not come to our state. You should not come. I said this yesterday. If you're a returning Tasmanian, yes, you can. If you're an essential traveller, yes, you can. But if you're coming to Tasmania for a reason that's not essential, just simply do not come.
A major life insurer has moved to cut off payments to frontline doctors who die from COVID-19. A leaked document from TAL reveals it's inserting an exclusion into new policies, denying payouts for people deemed at high risk of dying from the coronavirus. It's understood to apply to doctors fighting COVID-19 as well as people aged over 50, asthmatics and those with lung disease. TAL says it has only added the clause to a small number of new policies and it won't affect existing customers. The world's 20 most developed economies, the group of countries known as the G20, has promised to work together to fight the coronavirus at an emergency summit held via video link. Middle East correspondent Eric Torchek reports.
Saudi Arabia is hosting the G20 this year, but the coronavirus forced world leaders to hold this emergency summit via video conference. German Chancellor Angela Merkel even joined from her apartment, where she's in home quarantine. The G20 led the response to the global financial crisis just over a decade ago, and its members are promising to work together again to fight the virus outbreak. That includes committing more money for research into a vaccine and calling for more support for international agencies such as the World Health Organization. Russian President Vladimir Putin suggested sanctions be suspended while the pandemic rages. That would mean US economic sanctions on Iran, as well as European Union sanctions against Russia for its annexation of Crimea. The International Monetary Fund has asked the G20 to double the emergency financing assistance, saying 80 countries have already asked for help. It warned that unless rich countries cushion vulnerable businesses and households, it could take years to overcome the effects of widespread bankruptcies and job losses.